Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Ann Conti from the Northwest Tri-County Intermediate Unit, and thank you for joining us this morning for our virtual Student in the Workplace Connection for a program that we are coordinating with Northwest PA Job Connect. We are happy you're joining us, and welcome back if you already joined us this morning or you've joined us for a previous event. We're happy to have you here. This morning, this session, we have Katie Paolini. She's a Senior Human Resources Manager at Komatsu Mining. She's going to be joining us talking a little bit about her job, what she does, and what her organization does. Before I send her live to answer questions, just a few logistical things. Somewhere on your screen, you will see what looks like a little chat box with a question mark in it. If you click on that, it will give you the opportunity to submit questions. Please feel free to submit questions at any point throughout this session, and then we will get to those within the last 10 or 15 minutes of our session and make sure that we get all of your questions answers. Don't feel like you have to wait until that time. You can ask questions at any point throughout our 30-minute session here. So without further ado, I'm going to send Katie live. Hi, Katie. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good morning.
So we will just start out. If you can tell us a little bit, one, about your job and what you do, but also a little bit about the organization that you work for as well.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Katie Paolini. I work for a company called Komatsu, which you might recognize when you're driving down the road. You see construction equipment on the side of the road with Komatsu. That's the company I work for. I'm a Senior Human Resources Manager. Specifically, I work for the Mining Solutions division of the company, which we manufacture equipment for underground coal mining. I am specifically an HR business partner to the business leaders in the organization, and I specialize in people. So my job is to support specifically global operations and global supply chain with the individuals in the organization to help with their growth and development. Historically speaking, in human resources, people would think of hiring and firing, but it's come a long way. And my job is to really partner with the leaders in the organization to help with people development, career development, engagement, compensation and benefits, everything from contract negotiations, succession planning, and really developing our leaders to be core business agents in the organization.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So I want to tap into some of the things that you said and maybe get a few more details, especially for our folks out there who maybe did think of human resources as that hiring and firing and not that plethora of things that you just listed. And so can you talk a little bit about how you work with your employees? You talked about career development and such. How do you work with employees to develop them and help them?
So it's twofold. I mean, I work directly with employees, but I also help managers and leaders to learn how to develop their employees. And not everybody has the skill set to be a leader. Managing people and leading people are very different things. When you're a leader, you want to be somebody that's thinking about how your employees can better in the organization, how they can better themselves. And so for me, that's working with them to talk about, okay, what is that employee's goal? How do they want to develop their career? And that could be from everything for what training do they need, what further education do they need, what exposure or what more experience do they need in the organization. And for me, I support a global organization. And so we do a lot of things by not only adding training or adding experience, but we have employees that take assignments globally and might work in Australia, or they might work in China for years to gain exposure to other parts of the organization. Or it might be something as simple as they need training. They need to understand how to project manage, and we have training for that. We work just so closely with understanding what do you need and how can I get you what you need? So problem solving is very, very important. Being able to have a really close relationship with the employees and the business leaders so they can come to me and speak openly. So I think a core aspect to be successful in my role is to be personable, to be able to work with others, and to build relationships.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because I think one of the things we've talked about on every session is what are those soft skills, career skills that are necessary to be successful in the job that you have. And you mentioned being able to work with other people, problem solving. Is there anything else you would add to that are skills you would need to be successful?
Absolutely. And I always go back to, I waitressed all through my high school and college career. And that was such a foundational experience for me, because when you're dealing with the public and you're dealing with their food, as you know, that is something very important to people. So understanding how to work with people, but also to change your approach or change your almost your personality to who you're working with is really important. And understanding, because everybody has very different personalities. And the organization that I work in, I work with engineers, I work with people in manufacturing, and typically a personality of an engineer and a person in manufacturing is very different. So it's important for me to be able to change my approach based on the person I'm working with. In addition to that, problem solving skills are really important. Critical thinking is key. And also just being self-driven, self-motivated, not waiting for people to ask you to do something. I think that's why I've been successful, is that I don't wait for my business leaders to come to me. I see in the future what they're going to need, and I go to them before they can even think of it sometimes. So that's just a few things that I think would be helpful for a person in HR.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the fact that you waitressed before you went on to work in the job that you work in, because I think the skills you learn in waitressing or any real customer service job that a student might have, especially in high school, you might not think that those skills are going to be important, but you do learn so much on how to interact with people and support people, and probably patience as well. So getting those.
Essentially, my role is customer service. It's just that my customers are internal rather than external. So it's my role to support my internal customers so they can do their jobs to support our external customers.
Yeah, and that's a great point about how skills are transferable, right? Everything we learn somewhere can probably help us in what we're doing now. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Mm-hmm. So to get a little bit more specific, you obviously listed all of the things that you work in, but what does a typical day look like for you, and where do you maybe spend the majority of your time? Or I guess if every day is different, can you speak to that?
So every day is different, and I think that's one of the things that for somebody that likes fast pace, HR is a really good job for you, because my day is fast paced and different. When I started at Komatsu, I worked in manufacturing, so I was actually in a plant on the floor, and my day-to-day at that time was very much being out on the shop floor, being visible to the employees, answering questions. I did a lot of answering benefit questions and things of that nature. Mostly just day-to-day was dealing with people and answering questions or solving problems. It could be from like I said, a benefits question to an employee issue that you have to solve. And that's a big piece of your role when you're in HR. Now I'm in more of a corporate setting. So my days are very much more involved with meetings, but those meetings are a lot of discussions around strategy and people development, organizational development, thinking about how we can grow and strengthen the employee base that we have. I do a lot more succession planning now, so thinking into the future on key roles in the organization and how we can develop people to be able to grow internally into those positions. But again, I think I'm successful in my role now because I was able to start basically from the bottom and work up, and having those experiences working with manufacturing and people on the shop floor really helps you to gain experience and gain a different mindset when you move into a role that's more corporate and thinking in the organization as a whole.
Yeah, thank you. So we actually had a question come through that I think maybe might be important to address now.
Okay.
Someone asked if you could explain more who your internal versus external customers are to my students.
Absolutely. So for Komatsu, our external customers are specifically for the portion of the business that I work for are mines. So in Pennsylvania, you might have heard of Consol Energy. They're one of our primary customers. They buy our equipment and they use our equipment to mine coal. So that is an external customer of our organization. For me, in my role in human resources, my internal customers are the employees. So they are the girls and guys on the shop floor building that equipment. They're the managers. They're the buyers. They're the finance people. Those are my internal customers that I am here to support them so that they can do their jobs to build this equipment for our external customers such as Consol.
Thank you for clarifying. And just, we've had a couple of people, I think, log on after we started. So since I mentioned the Q&A, I just want to reiterate to everyone out there, our participants, that where you're going to find that live Q&A is, it's a little thought bubble with a question mark in it. If you click on that, you have the ability to submit questions. So just another reminder to folks who may have logged on a little bit late. Katie, my next question, and I'm asking because I personally know, can you speak to a little bit your global organization? Have you had the opportunity to travel with the organization, and what's that look like, and where have you gone?
I have. So again, I do support a global organization, and I have a really good relationship with the leaders of those different functions, supply chain and operations, and they treat me very much as part of their team. And so I've had the opportunity over the last several years to travel to South Africa, which was an amazing experience. And then recently, just last November, I was in China, specifically in Beijing, for other meetings and such. So I think if you have an interest in traveling, you wouldn't even think it, but you can travel in HR as well. So again, it's just about, I think, developing yourself into experiences that allow you, if you're open to it and you have the right role, that you can, pretty much do anything in human resources.
Awesome, thank you. Katie, can you speak a little bit to what your career journey has been? And so if you want to start back with education and then kind of how you found your way into the position that you're in now.
Sure. So when I started college several years ago now, I went into business management at Kent State University, which is in Ohio. And business management is a pretty broad degree, right? So it can be difficult. But while I was in college, I got an internship at a hospital that was local in human resources, and it was unpaid. And I worked the entire time doing a lot of filing and such while I was in college. And then when I graduated from college, I was hired on full time. And so had it not been for that internship, who knows where I would have went with it, but I really enjoyed the HR field. I enjoyed how every day was different and working with people, and it just really worked with my personality. When I then left that employer and joined Komatsu, I was able to get my MBA, Master's in Business Administration from Gannon University. And interestingly enough, Gannon and my company worked together. So I actually took my entire MBA while working for Komatsu, and it was a really great opportunity. So that's my educational background, but I guess I would use this avenue to tell students that are on the call today that one of the biggest things that you can do for yourself is get an internship. So when you are going through college, I know some degrees require internships and some do not, but as an employer, when we are hiring, especially students straight out of college, having an internship on your resume is one of the biggest factors that we look for, and it helps you just gain experience and also really determine what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah, and I think that's a nice segue into a next question here. I know your world isn't just hiring and firing, but in addition to having an internship for students who are applying for jobs and maybe jobs within your organization, what helps them stick out to you? And maybe that's on their resume, or maybe that's through the actual interview.
Absolutely, that's a good question. So I said an internship is key. I think what also sticks out is being involved in extracurricular activities in school, whether you're in clubs, even I know in our area, because we live in a very rural area, specifically where Komatsu is located, we think very highly of people that have like Eagle Scouts on their resume, things of that nature. That's huge, because that is such a foundational experience for students, that team and camaraderie that it builds. So we really think highly when we see that on a resume, and honestly, it does move it a lot to the top. But I think an internship, and I also think GPA is important. I know it can be difficult, especially when you're going into like an engineering field, but having strong curriculum and showing that you have a hard work ethic is really key. And then the interview itself, I know it can be very nerve-wracking for people their first time, but I think just being on time and dressed professionally, and trying to be as personable and outgoing and show us your personality, those are some of the key things that we look for.
Awesome. I love that you said on time, right? Something as simple as that. We can all control that. Definitely. Can you speak to a little bit, what the different maybe degrees and education that you can get out there that could lead to a career in human resources, because it might not be just one, right?
Absolutely. I often say jokingly that I should have a degree in psychology, because so much of what I do is just dealing with the psyche of people. But no, in all honesty and in seriousness, typically people in HR have a background in business, marketing. We do have, my boss actually has a degree in psychology. So those business-related psychology, marketing fields typically is what we see for human resources.
Awesome, thank you. And just good to know that, it doesn't have to necessarily be one thing, that there's a lot of pathways sometimes in general that can get you to the end game of human resources or whatever that might be. When we're speaking to high schoolers out there, what are some of the things that you think, skills and abilities that they might have that would make them a good fit for human resources? So that might be a class or a club or just an ability. What do you think would make someone who's interested in human resources, what are some of those skills you would see in them, just even at the high school level?
Typically somebody that's a bit more outgoing. I do a lot of talking in my job, so being comfortable with public speaking is pretty important. If you're extremely shy or uncomfortable talking in front of others, this is probably not the role for you. I think being somebody that's willing to be adaptable to change, patient, and again, able to adjust their personality sometimes based on who they're working with. So I often say, like, I'm like a chameleon. I kind of have to change who I am based on who I'm talking to or who I'm working with. And then I think somebody that had work experience through high school, and I just mean somebody that had a part-time job while they were in high school or college where they had to work with the public, is something that would make moving into an HR field a lot easier for you.
Thank you. So here's a good question. Can you name your favorite thing about your job, and then can you name your least favorite thing about your job?
My favorite thing about my job is problem solving. I'm just a problem solver in nature. I love to fix things, And so that's my favorite thing, is just when somebody comes to me with a problem and I fix it and they're like, wow, like, that's awesome, you're awesome. That just makes me happy and makes my day. My least favorite thing is there is a lot of just administrative work that comes in HR, even at my level. And again, I started, with the company as in an admin type role, and now I'm in a manager role, and the administrative work doesn't ever really go away. That's just part of HR. It becomes, it's not so much paper pushing as it used to be in the past because everything is automated, but there's still a lot of just administrative work that comes with it. And so that's probably my least favorite, but it's just part of the job.
Sure. And maybe a part of most jobs out there, right? There's
Right.
always that administrative side. So going off of the first part of that question, do you have any stories or interactions that have happened in your job that you feel like, wow, that's really cool, or no one would expect to have heard that you had this experience in your job?
Well, I think the traveling piece, I know you mentioned that earlier. I think that it's surprising to people to think that
Sure.
an HR person was traveling to these different parts of the world for work. And that's very exciting. I mean, it's something that I would not have normally done had I not been in this job, to go to South Africa and China and get to see parts of the world that, again, are not something that you usually do. But I think, for me, is specific to my role. I think just the relationships that you build might be surprising to people. You become so close with the employees and the leaders that you work with that they really rely on you. And I don't think it's something that you expect, because again, you think of HR and you think paper pushers or hiring and firing, but you really do build very strong relationships with the employees and the organization. And so that makes your job a lot easier. But again, I don't think it's something that people expect necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. So question here, can you speak to maybe the job availability and stability in the field of human resources? Are there jobs out there for students who would want to go into that?
That's actually a really great question, because there are jobs available, but HR is one of those fields that when you post a job, because it is more broad business rather than like something like engineering where you have to have a very specific technical skill, you will get hundreds of applicants, right? So that can be very, very difficult, especially if you're coming out of college and you're just one name of hundreds, right? And you have a degree. And so the biggest thing I can say is that if you want to go into HR and that's your goal, you have to get an internship. That's going to at least give you the opportunity that maybe that internship leads to something full-time, or maybe they can at least refer you to another opening, because HR jobs oftentimes are filled internally. Or again, you're one applicant of hundreds. So if that is a field that you are interested in, I do recommend trying to get some sort of an internship while you're in college.
Yeah, and that's important, speaking to the experience and the networking and just how important it is. And if you wouldn't mind, could you explain what being hired internally means for those out there who might not know?
Right. So internally speaking just means you post a job within the organization and we hire somebody that's already in the organization, and we wouldn't look at resumes that were out like on Indeed or LinkedIn or anything like that.
Thank you. And I think, a positive of that is for maybe your organization and other organizations that there's opportunity for advancement and for moving up and getting into different positions, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Katie, I'm going to leave you with one final question that we ask of everyone. So for the most part on these calls, we do have a lot of high school students and high school seniors. So if you could give our high schoolers out there one piece of advice as they are starting to navigate the what comes next portion, what would you tell them as they start to figure out what they want to do and where they want to go and all of that?
It's an exciting platform because I interview a lot of college students in my role for different things. So if I could give them any advice, it would be if you decide to go to a college, a four-year college or university, I would recommend to be diligent in choosing a field that you know you can get a job in. I see a lot of students that go into college with very general degrees like a business and a psychology, and sometimes it works out. But I think right now with the way our market is with roles availability, it's very important that you're specific in what you're choosing and you're choosing a field that will lead to a job. If for some reason you decide that you want to go into a more technical route, I can tell you because I have many manufacturing sites under me, we are in need of skilled trade like you can't believe. It's very, very hard right now to find people that have skilled trades, from machinists to welders, CNC programmers, and everything in between. It seems to be a dying field, and there's a lot of opportunity there. Komatsu is a fantastic company to work for, and you can find good jobs in these areas where you are making good money with benefits and 401k. So I guess again, just to be specific on what I'm recommending, it's that really think about what you want to do and choose a field that leads to a job.
I think that's fantastic advice and speaks to why it's really important to start engaging in sort of career education and looking into what's out there very early on, so that you don't get to the end of your senior year, either in high school or college, and not really know what's out there and exactly what you're going to use your degree for. Well, Katie, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate you sharing all of your information with our students, lots of good information and advice out there. Do you have any last words that you would like to say?
No, just I appreciate your time and for speaking with you, and I just hope everybody on the call stays safe and healthy and has a great day.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
And just a thank you to everyone out there for joining us. Please stay tuned into our website. That's where we continue to have the links for all of our upcoming virtual connections. And a last final thank you to Katie for joining us. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.